Have you ever sat alone in a room full of people and felt the weight of emptiness pressing down on your chest? That crushing sensation of disconnection, even when surrounded by countless faces and voices. I see some of you nodding. You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? Let me share something profound with you today. Something that might seem counterintuitive at first, but I promise you, it holds a truth that can transform your life. Loneliness, that very feeling we spend our lives running from, can be our greatest teacher on the path to genuine happiness. You see, we've been conditioned to believe that loneliness is something to fear, something to avoid at all costs. We fill our lives with noise, endless social media scrolling, mindless television, superficial conversations, anything to escape that quiet moment when we're forced to sit with ourselves. But what if I told you that this very discomfort you're trying to escape is actually the doorway to your deepest joy? Think about a seed for a moment. Before it becomes a magnificent tree, it must first be buried in complete darkness, totally alone. In that darkness, something magical happens. The seed breaks open, transforms, and begins its journey toward the light. Your loneliness is like that darkness. It's not your enemy. It's the sacred space where your transformation begins. I remember a time when I found myself completely alone in a new city. No friends, no family, no familiar faces to turn to. The silence in my apartment was deafening. Every evening I would watch the sunset from my window, feeling like the only person in the world. But in that solitude, something remarkable began to happen. I started hearing a voice I had been drowning out for years. My own. You see, loneliness has this extraordinary way of stripping away all our pretenses. When there's no one to perform for, no role to play, no mask to wear, we're finally forced to confront our authentic selves. And let me tell you, that meeting can be uncomfortable at first. We've spent so much time being who others expect us to be that we've forgotten who we truly are. But here's the beautiful paradox. It's only when we learn to be completely at peace with our own company that we can truly connect with others. Think about that for a moment. How can we possibly offer authentic connection to another human being if we're terrified of being alone with ourselves? Many of us have become masters of distraction. We've convinced ourselves that if we're busy enough, successful enough, or popular enough, we'll never have to face that dreaded feeling of loneliness. We chase relationships, achievements, and possessions, hoping they'll fill that empty space inside. But have you noticed how that emptiness always seems to find its way back? That's because we're looking for happiness in all the wrong places. We're searching outside ourselves for something that can only be found within. Happiness isn't a destination you reach by accumulating more things or relationships. It's a state of being that emerges when you finally make peace with yourself. Consider this. Every great spiritual teacher, every profound philosopher, every transformative leader in history went through periods of intense solitude. They understood that there's a fundamental difference between being lonely and being alone. Loneliness is the pain we feel when we're disconnected from ourselves. Being alone, truly alone, is the space where we finally connect with our deeper truth. I want you to try something with me right now. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath. Feel the weight of your body in your chair. Now, instead of running from that feeling of loneliness that might arise, I want you to welcome it. Invite it in like an old friend who has something important to teach you. What if every moment of loneliness in your life was actually preparing you for something greater? What if it was the universe's way of creating space in your life for real, authentic joy to enter? You see, happiness isn't the absence of loneliness. It's the profound understanding that you are complete, whole, and worthy exactly as you are, even when you're completely alone. Think about the ocean for a moment. On the surface, waves crash and chaos reigns. But dive deeper and you'll find absolute stillness. Your life is like that ocean. The loneliness you feel is just surface turbulence. Beneath it lies a profound stillness. A deep knowing, a connection to something far greater than yourself. This journey from loneliness to happiness isn't about filling the void. It's about understanding that the void itself is sacred. It's about recognizing that those moments when you feel most alone are actually opportunities for the deepest self-discovery. They're invitations to explore the vast universe that exists within you. I've witnessed countless individuals transform their relationship with loneliness. There was a woman who lost her husband of 40 years, In her grief and loneliness, she discovered a strength she never knew she had. She learned that happiness wasn't dependent on another person's presence. It was a light she could kindle within herself. What these individuals discovered, and what I want you to understand, is that loneliness isn't a punishment. It's a pathway. It's not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's an indication that you're ready for a deeper level of self-discovery. The very fact that you feel lonely means you're capable of profound connection. The question is, are you ready to begin with the most important connection of all, the one with yourself? You see, happiness isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens through you. And sometimes it takes the experience of complete solitude to clear away all the distractions and finally hear the wisdom of your own heart. When you learn to sit comfortably in your loneliness, you discover that you were never really alone at all. You were just disconnected from your true self. This journey we're discussing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you've always been. It's about peeling away the layers of social conditioning that have convinced you that your worth depends on external validation. It's about recognizing that the very loneliness you've been running from might be the key to unlocking your authentic joy. Let me share something powerful with you. Something that might shift your entire perspective on loneliness. Have you ever noticed how society has taught us to view loneliness as some kind of disease that needs to be cured? We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us that if we're alone, there must be something wrong with us. But what if loneliness isn't the problem? What if it's actually the solution? When you really think about it, every major breakthrough in human history came from someone who was willing to stand alone with their thoughts, their ideas, their vision. Every great invention, every revolutionary idea, every spiritual awakening. You see, loneliness creates space for creativity, for inspiration, for divine connection. But here's where most people get stuck. They confuse being lonely with being inferior. They interpret their solitude as a sign of a social failure rather than recognizing it as an opportunity for spiritual growth. Ask yourself, how many times have you rushed into the wrong relationship, the wrong job, the wrong decision simply because you were afraid of being alone? There's a profound difference between reacting to loneliness and responding to it. When we react, we desperately try to fill the void with anything available, toxic relationships, mindless activities, endless distractions. But when we respond, we approach our solitude with curiosity. We ask ourselves, what is this feeling trying to teach me? What truth is trying to emerge? You know, I've observed something fascinating in my years of working with people. Those who are most afraid of being alone often struggle the most with finding genuine happiness. They become emotional chameleons, constantly changing their colors to match their environment, losing themselves in the process. How can you possibly be happy when you don't even know who you are? Consider this: every time you feel lonely, you're actually being given a gift. It's an invitation to become intimately acquainted with yourself. In those quiet moments when there's no one else to impress, no role to play, you have the opportunity to discover your authentic voice. And let me tell you something, that voice has been waiting patiently to be heard. Think about the times in your life when you felt most alive, most authentic, most connected to your purpose. I bet many of those moments came after periods of solitude, of reflection, of wrestling with your own thoughts and feelings. That's not a coincidence. That's the universe showing you the path to true happiness. But here's the challenge. We live in a world that's terrified of silence. We're constantly surrounded by noise, by stimulation, by the endless chatter of social media and 24-hour news cycles. We've forgotten how to be still, how to listen to the wisdom that can only be heard in silence. And in that forgetting, we've lost touch with our innate capacity for joy. See, happiness isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. It's not about adding more to your life. It's about removing the obstacles that block your natural state of joy. And one of the biggest obstacles is our resistance to being alone. We become so dependent on external validation that we've forgotten how to validate ourselves. Let me share a powerful truth with you. The quality of your relationship with yourself determines the quality of every other relationship in your life. When you learn to enjoy your own company, when you discover the peace that comes from true self-acceptance, You stop trying to use other people to fill your emptiness. Instead, you begin to attract relationships based on mutual growth and shared purpose. This is where the magic happens. When you embrace your loneliness instead of running from it, you begin to discover resources within yourself that you never knew existed. You develop emotional independence. You build inner strength. You cultivate self-trust. These are the true foundations of happiness, not the fleeting pleasures we usually... Think about the most confident, self-assured person you know. I guarantee you they've learned to be comfortable in their own skin, in their own company. They don't need constant validation or approval from others because they've done the inner work. They've faced their loneliness and discovered that on the other side of that fear lies incredible freedom. But let's be honest, this isn't an easy journey. There will be moments when the silence feels deafening, when the loneliness seems unbearable. In those moments, remember to say, discomfort is not your enemy. It's simply a sign that you're growing, that you're pushing beyond your familiar boundaries, that you're creating space for something new to emerge. You might be wondering, how do I start? How do I begin this journey of transforming my loneliness into happiness? The answer is simpler than you might think, but it requires courage. It starts with sitting with your loneliness instead of trying to escape it. It begins with asking yourself the questions you've been afraid to ask. What do I really want? What brings me joy? What am I here to contribute? Consider keeping a dialogue with your loneliness. Yes, you heard me right. Treat it as a wise teacher rather than an unwelcome guest. When it shows up, ask it, what are you here to teach me? What part of myself am I being invited to see? You'll be amazed at the insights that emerge when you approach your solitude with curiosity instead. Remember, every moment of loneliness is actually an opportunity for deeper self-discovery. It's a chance to strengthen your spiritual muscles, to develop emotional resilience, to cultivate inner peace. The more comfortable you become with being alone, the more you'll realize that true happiness doesn't depend on external circumstances. It flows from your relationship with yourself. Think about how much energy you spent trying to avoid feeling lonely. Imagine if you could redirect that energy toward understanding yourself, toward pursuing your passions, toward living your purpose. That's the transformation that becomes possible when you stop seeing loneliness as your enemy and start recognizing it as your guide. This journey from loneliness to happiness isn't about becoming a hermit or withdrawing from relationships. It's about establishing such a strong foundation within yourself that you can engage with others from a place of fullness rather than need. It's about discovering that the very thing you've been running from, solitude, might actually hold the key to the joy you've been seeking. You know what fascinates me? The way we've been programmed to believe that being alone means something's wrong with us. We scroll through our social media feeds seeing carefully curated images of people surrounded by friends, and we think, but let me ask you something. How many people do you know who are surrounded by others yet feel completely alone? True happiness isn't measured by the number of people around you. It's measured by the depth of your connection with yourself. Think about that for a moment. How well do you really know yourself? When was the last time you sat in silence and simply listened to your own thoughts without judgment? There's a beautiful irony in the fact that the very thing we fear, loneliness, contains within it the seeds of our liberation. When we're alone, truly alone, we begin to hear the whispers of our soul. Those quiet messages that get drowned out by the noise of daily life suddenly become crystal clear. I want to share something profound with you about the nature of happiness. Most people think happiness is like a destination, somewhere you arrive once everything in your life is perfect. But that's not how it works. Happiness is more like a garden. And just like any garden, it needs periods of dormancy, of quiet, of apparent emptiness before new growth can emerge. Your moments of loneliness are like the winter season in your spiritual garden. Everything appears still, perhaps even lifeless on the surface. But beneath that stillness, incredible transformations are taking place. New insights are taking root. Fresh perspectives are germinating. Your consciousness is expanding in ways that are only possible in solitude. Let's talk about something that few people understand, the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is what you feel when you're disconnected from yourself. Solitude is what you experience when you finally make that connection. The journey from one to the others, what we're really talking about here. You see, every moment of loneliness is actually an invitation to go deeper. Instead of reaching for your phone, instead of turning on the TV, instead of calling someone, what if you just sat with that feeling? What if you got curious about it? What secrets might it reveal to you? I've noticed something remarkable in my work with people over the years. Those who learn to embrace their solitude often discover gifts they never knew they had. Creative abilities that were dormant suddenly spring to life. Intuitive powers they didn't realize they possessed begin to surface. Why? Because when you're truly alone, you're finally giving those deeper parts of yourself space to emerge. But here's the challenge. We live in a world that's absolutely terrified of silence. We've created an entire culture built around avoiding it. We keep ourselves so busy, so distracted, so constantly entertained that we never have to face the emptiness within. And in doing so, we miss out on the profound transformation that emptiness could initiate. Think about the ocean again for a moment. The surface might be choppy, full of waves and turbulence. But the deeper you go, the more stillness you find. Your consciousness works the same way. The surface level might be full of lonely thoughts, anxious feelings, desperate needs for connection. But as you go deeper, as you learn to sit with those feelings, instead of running from them, you discover an unchanging peace that's always been there. What if loneliness isn't actually a problem to be solved, but a door to be walked through? What if those moments when you feel most alone are actually opportunities for the deepest connection with your true self? The self that exists beyond all your roles, beyond all your relationships, beyond all your achievements and failures. I want you to consider something revolutionary. What if you could be so completely at peace with yourself that being alone becomes as natural as breathing? Imagine never again feeling that desperate need to fill the silence, to escape the solitude, to run from your own company. Imagine discovering that everything you've been seeking in the outside world has been within you all along. This isn't just positive thinking. This is about fundamentally transforming your relationship with yourself. It's about recognizing that loneliness is actually a sacred space where the deepest truths about yourself can finally emerge. It's where you learn to distinguish between your authentic voice and the voices you've internalized from others. You know, there's something remarkable that happens when you stop treating loneliness as an enemy and start seeing it as a teacher. Your whole perspective shifts. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me that I'm alone? You begin to ask, what can I learn from this experience? How can this solitude serve my growth? The path from loneliness to happiness isn't about changing your circumstances. It's about changing your relationship with yourself. It's about developing such a deep and loving connection with your own being that you become a source of light for others. Because here's the truth. When you learn to be genuinely happy in your own company, you become magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who have found their center, who are at peace with themselves. But this journey requires courage. It requires a willingness to sit with uncomfortable feelings instead of trying to escape them. It requires faith that on the other side of your loneliness, something beautiful is waiting to be discovered. Most of all, it requires patience. The patience to allow your inner garden to bloom in its own time, in its own way. Remember this? Every great soul who has ever walked this earth had to learn to be alone with themselves. Every wisdom teacher, every spiritual guide, every transformative leader understood that true strength comes not from avoiding loneliness, but from transforming it into a source of power and insight. Let me share something with you that might change the way you think about happiness forever. We've been taught to believe that happiness is something we achieve once we've accumulated enough friends, enough success, enough validation from others. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if real happiness comes not from accumulating more, but from needing less? This is where your experience with loneliness becomes incredibly valuable. You see, loneliness strips away all our pretenses. It removes all the distractions we usually use to avoid facing ourselves. And in that stripped-down state, we have the opportunity to discover something remarkable. We are enough exactly as we are. Think about a time when you felt completely alone. Maybe it was late at night, when the world was quiet. Maybe it was in a crowded room where you felt disconnected from everyone around you. In that moment, beneath the discomfort, beneath the fear, there was something else, quiet strength, a deep knowing, a connection to something larger than yourself. You see, loneliness has this extraordinary way of forcing us to confront the most fundamental questions of our existence. Who am I when nobody's watching? What do I truly want, not what others expect of me? What brings me genuine joy, not just temporary pleasure? These are the questions that lead us to authentic happiness. I want you to understand something profound about the relationship between loneliness and happiness. They're not opposites. They're actually intimately connected. Just as you can't have light without darkness, you can't develop true happiness without first making peace with your loneliness. Consider this. Every time you feel lonely, you're actually being given an opportunity to develop emotional independence. Each moment of solitude is a chance to strengthen your spiritual muscles. Every experience of being alone is an invitation to discover the vast resources that exist within you. But here's where most people get stuck. They try to skip this crucial step. They attempt to build happiness on a foundation of dependency, looking to others to fill their inner emptiness. It's like trying to build a house without first laying the foundation. It might look good for a while, but eventually it will crumble. The truth is, happiness that depends on external circumstances isn't really happiness at all. It's just temporary pleasure. Real happiness, the kind that sustains you through life's inevitable ups and downs, can only come from within. And sometimes it takes the experience of profound loneliness to guide us back to this inner. Think about how much energy you spend trying to avoid feeling lonely. The endless scrolling through social media, the relationships you stay in, even when they no longer serve you, the activities you engage in just to avoid being alone with your thoughts. What if you could redirect all that energy towards something more meaningful? Here's a powerful truth. The quality of your life isn't determined by how many people are in it, but by how deeply you're connected to yourself. When you develop this connection, something magical happens. You stop trying to escape loneliness and start recognizing it as a portal to deeper self. I've witnessed countless individuals transform their lives once they understood this principle. They stopped seeing their solitude as a problem to be solved and started treating it as a gift to be unwrapped. And in that unwrapping, they discovered treasures they never knew they possessed: creativity, intuition, inner peace, genuine self-love. But let me be clear. This isn't about becoming a hermit or withdrawing from relationships. It's about developing such a strong foundation within yourself that you can engage with others from a place of fullness rather than need. It's about becoming so comfortable in your own company that you can choose relationships rather than desperately seeking them. You know what's fascinating? When you reach this state of inner contentment, your relationships actually improve. Why? Because you're no longer trying to use other people to fill your emptiness. You're not looking to them to make you happy. Instead, you're sharing the happiness that already exists within you. Think about the most genuinely happy people you know. Notice how they don't seem desperate for company or approval. They enjoy being with others, but they're equally content being alone. That's because they've done this inner work. They've transformed their relationship with loneliness into a source of strength. This journey from loneliness to happiness isn't about changing your circumstances. It's about changing your consciousness. It's about recognizing that every moment of solitude is actually an opportunity for deeper self-discovery. Every experience of being alone is a chance to strengthen your connection with your authentic self. Consider this. What if the loneliness you're feeling right now is actually a sign that you're ready for a deeper level of happiness? What if it's not a punishment, but a preparation? What if it's the universe's way of creating space in your life for something more meaningful to emerge? You see, true happiness isn't found in escaping loneliness. It's found in transcending it. It's about reaching a state where you're so completely at peace with yourself that being alone becomes as natural as breathing, where solitude becomes not something you endure, but something you cherish. This is the kind of happiness that can't be taken away from you because it doesn't depend on external circumstances. It's the happiness that comes from knowing yourself deeply, from being comfortable in your own skin, from having an unshakable connection with your inner being. I want to share something powerful with you as we draw to a close. Something that might completely transform how you view your journey from this moment forward. Every single person in this room has experienced loneliness. Every single one of you has felt that ache in your heart, that emptiness that seems impossible to fill. But what if that very emptiness is actually the space where your greatest potential lies waiting? You see, we've been looking at loneliness all wrong. We've been treating it like an illness that needs to be cured when it's actually a gift waiting to be unwrapped. Think about it. In those moments when you feel most alone, you're actually being given the opportunity to discover who you truly are beneath all the roles you play, beneath all the masks you wear. Let me tell you something remarkable about happiness. It's not about having everything you want. It's about wanting everything you have, including those moments of solitude that life brings your way. When you can sit peacefully with your own thoughts, when you can find contentment in your own company, you've discovered a treasure that no one can ever take away from you. Consider this. Every great transformation in human history began with someone who was willing to stand alone with their truth. Every profound discovery, every revolutionary idea, every spiritual awakening emerged from moments of solitude. Your loneliness isn't isolating you from life. It's preparing you for your own transformation. You know what's truly extraordinary? The moment you stop running from loneliness is the moment you start running toward your authentic self. And in that journey, you discover that happiness isn't something you chase. It's something you uncover. It's been within you all along, waiting patiently beneath the layers of fear, beneath the massive social conditioning. I want you to imagine something with me right now. Imagine a future version of yourself who has made peace with solitude. Someone who no longer fears being alone because they've discovered the richness of their inner world. Someone who approaches relationships not from a place of need, but from a place of fullness. Someone who has learned that true happiness isn't about having the right company. It's about being the right company. This isn't just positive thinking. This is about fundamentally transforming your relationship with yourself. It's about reaching a place where your happiness is no longer dependent on external circumstances, where you can face any situation, any challenge, any moment of solitude with an unshakable sense. Think about the freedom that comes with this transformation. No more desperately seeking approval from others. No more staying in situations that don't serve you just because you're afraid of being alone. No more compromising your truth to fit in. Instead, you become a lighthouse, steady, strong, and capable of guiding others through their own storms. But here's what I really want you to understand. This journey from loneliness to happiness isn't about reaching a destination. It's about embracing the journey itself. Every moment of discomfort, every experience of solitude, every challenge you face is actually helping you develop the emotional and spiritual muscles you need for genuine happiness. Remember this. Happiness isn't the absence of loneliness. It's the presence of peace, even when you're alone. It's not about having someone to share your life with. It's about having a life worth sharing. And that kind of life can only be built through moments of solitude, through periods of self-discovery, through the courage to sit with your own thoughts and feelings. You are not broken because you feel lonely. You are not less worthy because you find yourself alone. In fact, these very experiences are shaping you into someone who can experience a depth of happiness that most people never know. They're teaching you self-reliance, self-trust, and most importantly, self-love. As we come to the close of our time together, I want to leave you with this thought. Your loneliness is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's showing you the parts of yourself that need attention, the aspects of your life that need nurturing, the truth that needs to emerge. When you embrace it with courage and curiosity, it becomes the very path that leads you to your most authentic happiness. In these final moments, I invite you to make a commitment to yourself. Commit to stopping the endless chase for external happiness. Commit to embracing your solitude as a sacred space for growth. Commit to discovering the joy that can only be found when you're truly at peace with yourself. Remember, the universe isn't punishing you with loneliness. It's preparing you for a level of happiness you couldn't have imagined before. Every moment of solitude is an opportunity to strengthen your connection with yourself. Every experience of being alone is a chance to discover the vast resources that exist within you. You are enough. You have always been enough. And in those quiet moments when you feel most alone, you're actually being invited to discover just how true that is. Let your loneliness lead you to the greatest discovery of all, that the happiness you've been seeking has been within you all along. Take this message with you. Let it sink deep into your consciousness. Let it transform your relationship with loneliness. And most importantly, let it guide you toward the authentic, unshakable happiness that is your natural birthright. The journey begins now, in this moment, with your willingness to see your solitude not as your enemy, but as your path to profound joy. Thank you for opening your hearts and minds to this message. May you find the courage to embrace your loneliness, the wisdom to learn from it, and the strength to let it guide you to your truest happiness.